Hi, this is Daniel Lanois. We're in the basement of my studio in Toronto. I'm having a little beer, and we've been taking some questions from some people who want to know how we do things in the studio. So here's another surprise question. I'm not aware of this one. Martha, will you read it while you hold the camera for us? I'll see if we can do this together.
So this is a question from Stuart Quinn from Ireland. And he says, Hi, Danny. You worked on several albums that have had long gestation periods or difficult births. Was there any projects where you lost faith or thought for a moment, we're never going to finish this? And what is your approach to when things like that happens?
Well, we always get a good start in the studio because we're good with our preparations. And whenever I've worked in Ireland, for example, a lot of time has been put into getting the right equipment together and making sure that the machines are well lubricated and everything's rolling along just nice. Um, but I found that there's never a shortage of great ideas when we first huddle up, be it with you two or otherwise, even the huddling up in my own studio. So we get excited about a sound or an idea, an approach, and off we go. And so the first chapter of record making usually produces a lot of results. Then comes a bit of hard work, as usual. You go through what you have and you make an assessment of it, and choose what might be most viable. And then we go back in for another chapter. Those get to be a little bit more difficult because they're not quite as spontaneous. The tasks are more specific to something that's already been laid down. So that part of the process, I say the middle part of a project, requires a certain kind of discipline and patience. That doesn't mean to say that we don't welcome new ideas, but we generally work on the ones we already have. And so, what's nice about working with people that you like and admire is, should you drop the ball or not have an idea how to carry on, then somebody else will, and that's what teams and mates are good for. So lucky for me, I've always had people I admire around me, in the recording studio and otherwise, and so we can never fully lose our way because the people around us are smart with good taste and they care. And I think if you care enough about your work, then you'll get through that time of maybe a little bit of confusion in the middle of the record. But then comes the racing back to the stable, where everything's sunshining and it's clear and you know what you want, and maybe you're down to mixes and vocals and we always keep an eye and an ear open for last minute surprises. But there's nothing like having done good work and having respected those early strong ideas. And if they've got magic in them, then all we do is try and serve the magic. So that's pretty much the process. And I'm sure other people have other ways that they do things, but that's how we do it. We are patient, we like spontaneity, and we like to finish things. Hopefully that finishing will involve a masterpiece, hopefully. Thanks a lot for asking. Yeah, man. Martha, please.
This is a question from Jim Bugg from Memphis, Tennessee. He's asking, Mr. Lanois, where and how did you learn to play pedal steel, and how did you take an instrument so synonymous with a particular type of music and repurpose it into your creation of soundscape ambient tracks? Thanks very much.
Well, that's a good question. Thank you for asking. I learned to play slide guitar in Canada. There was a conservatory in the neighborhood that was teaching accordion and slide guitar, and they sent a salesperson from house to house to see if these people would want to have kids that wanted to take lessons. And my mom says, yeah, this one likes music, because I was already playing the penny whistle at that time. It was a little $1 plastic penny whistle that I loved. And I passed the aptitude test, and the guy said, okay, we'll put you on slide. And that's it. I was a steel guitar player from day one. And then a few years later, I took up the pedal steel guitar. It's just a regular lap steel, really, except when you push the pedals, you can bend a couple of strings this way and that way. But I crossed the line into professional steel playing when I met a great Canadian steel player named Bob Lucier. Bob is a French-Canadian man like myself, and he was playing a club called the Edison, which was a country music club, and 2 doors over was the Brown Derby where I was playing. I was playing in a bar band. We're just doing cover songs and whatnot. And we were a show band, really. And in between sets, I went down to the Edison to hear Bob play, and I just loved it. And I thought that this was something that I would like to do myself. And I met Bob, and he agreed to teach me, and more importantly, he agreed to get me my first steel guitar, which was a very beautiful little Showbud. It's a little Pro 1, it's called. And I still have it, and I'm really grateful that I met Bob Lucier. And at that time, I was pretty much a country music player. I love what Bob was doing because he was it wasn't flash, he played beautiful chords. And I thought that I wanted to start playing chords and not play so fast. There were so many great players from Texas that I admired that were really good at faster playing, Lloyd Green and Buddy Emmons, to name two. But I was never as good as them, and I thought, well, I love this instrument, and how can I stay with it? Because I don't want to be, a third-rate player. And so I changed the tuning of it, and I found something in the instrument that resonated with me, and I started playing slower. I started turning up louder and playing softer with my right hand, and this allowed the ratio of fundamental to harmonic to work in my favor. And I liked what was happening harmonically, and I realized that those harmonics would be my guide to some more interesting improvs as I played. And that's what led the way to a more unique style that belonged to me. And it's what we always look for in the studio. It's what we look for in the making of Goodbye to Language. We're playing steel guitars. Well, how can it be special? And I found that when I was playing with my good friend Rocco DeLuca, that I could, even though my callings are not in the recordings, I'm in the room, I'm calling some chord changes, and that helps. So if a chord change is going well, we stay on it for a while. Then I say, okay, Rocco, let's get ready for the C sharp major, and then off we go. And so these improvs have beautiful sounds to them because we're not smashing our instruments. We're letting them flourish harmonically. And there was something beautiful about Rocco's guitar. It was a bit more harmonium-like in tone, and it allowed me to go way up high to more the starlit night sound that I call it. And so the meeting of these two instruments playing very different roles provided a beautiful spectrum of frequencies that I loved. And so I've never gone back to straight up country playing. I'll play more gospel-like. I'm not nearly as good as somebody like Greg Lease, who is a beautiful player in California who knows all the chords. And so people often ask me to play on their records, and I get a little nervous about it because I'm so homespun that I don't know how to play some of the complicated chords that show up in other people's songs. But anyhow, that's the gist of it. I never looked back. I still watch Buddy Emmons and Lloyd Green and some of these great Texas players, and they bring me to tears. But I could never be them. I want to be myself, so this was the direction that we went to. If you're lucky enough to be able to find your own voice, then let it be. So that was the quest, and still the quest now, every day in the studio, by steel guitar and otherwise. Something unique is nice. Thank you. Martha, who's holding the camera, will ask this question. She's going to read it from one of our contributors.
Yeah, this is a question from Sergio Mariani from Colorado. And he's asking, Daniel, please, in a few words, take us into the intimate and mysterious process of sound manipulation you use while processing Goodbye to Language in your sound laboratory. Were you alone? Was it during the day or night? Were you obsessed? What equipment did you use? Thank you, Daniel. You inspire many, Sergio.
All right, Sergio, thank you for your question. Goodbye to Language is a steel guitar record. I made the record with my friend Rocco DeLuca, who plays a lap steel tuned down to D. I play a pedal steel, same as a lap, except I can bend a few notes, and I'm tuned to E, so I'm a little bit brighter in tone. And Rocco he's got fat strings on his guitar, so he can play those beautiful low note chords. We started out just playing for fun in the recording studio, and of course I recorded. We weren't planning on recording, we were just playing together. And as I listened back to our recordings, I realized that there was something special about what was going on sonically and texturally and spiritually. I felt that we had hit on something. I've known Rocco for a long time. We've been on the road, so when we got back to the studio, we were able to get into some nice work without speaking too many words. And I was touched by the lack of an agenda. We didn't want to make a record. We didn't have record company expectations around us, and I thought we were making beautiful things, beautiful sounds without having to strategize or talk about it too much. And it got me thinking about saying goodbye to language. So, I'm going to take this as a sign that I have a nice communication system with my mate, and we're going to make a record that's based on that. So that was the beginning of doing things in an instrumental way. Following the improvs, I then meticulously went in and chose. I followed the chronology of what we played, but I removed sections that perhaps were redundant or had already been played better, and so the second time around I'd remove it, and so on. And so it became, once the performances had happened, it became an editor's job. I have the patience for this because I love my studio, and so I went through it all and chose the most fascinating parts and glued them all together. And it started sounding symphonic, strangely enough, in an old-fashioned way, but with new sounds, and it allowed me to go to a place harmonically that I'd never gone to before. I got very excited about this, and the edits became more radical, and the spontaneity of the performances was able to shine through. So we would not condemn something for being too far out because it didn't serve the song, because we didn't have songs. So we were just serving imagination and serving this wild universe of steel guitar sounds. And it opened up a whole other door for me, and it meant that I could get in there and start manipulating these sounds. And I used some of my usual equipment. I have cheap little samplers. I will sample a steel guitar, play the track back with that sample in the speakers, and wherever it makes sense, I drop it in. So it's a laborious process that I wouldn't recommend to anyone. If I could go back a couple of 100 years, I could be Bach and just write everything out, and the whole world would be happy. But I'm not that kind of musician. I create in the recording studio. The studio is part of my writing process. And so you never know where you're going to get a fascinating sound, with these samplers, and sometimes I'll use an octave divider. We even slow the tape down half, or a couple of tones down. And we make discoveries that we didn't know were there. I think we could safely say that this music was invented without blueprint, and it will therefore it always has the breadcrumbs of it offer kind of a pathway to more invention, more spontaneous inventions, and so by not being dictated by song, we are afforded the freedom of running wild. And so, as Bob Dylan said, if dogs run free, why can't I? We decided to be dogs. Thank you.